She was only 9 when they told her to leave. The frost had barely lifted from the ground when soldiers knocked on the door of her family's cabin and said it was time to go. No explanation, no choice, just a direction: west. This is the story of the Choctaw Trail of Tears, not through textbook dates or government orders, but through the memory of those who survived it. A story of betrayal, hunger, courage, and cultural resilience that echoes across generations. This is not just history, it's testimony. Long before the forced migrations, the Choctaw people flourished in the southeastern woodlands of what is now Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. Their homelands were rich with rivers, pine forests, and fertile soil. They lived in mound-building communities, governed by councils and led by respected elders and spiritual leaders. Women tended crops of corn, beans, and squash, while men hunted game and defended their towns. The Choctaw had a sophisticated political system. They built alliances, negotiated treaties, and even fought as U.S. allies in wars, most notably alongside Andrew Jackson during the Creek War and the War of 1812. But that loyalty would be repaid by betrayal. In 1830, the U.S. government passed the Indian Removal Act, giving President Andrew Jackson the power to relocate native tribes west of the Mississippi River. The Choctaw were the first to be targeted. Under immense pressure, some Choctaw leaders signed the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek, the first removal treaty under the new law. It promised safe passage, land in present-day Oklahoma, and U.S. citizenship for those who chose to stay. But the promises were a lie. Land speculators rushed in. Soldiers seized homes and burned villages. The government delayed payments. Corruption ran rampant, and the journey itself, meant to be voluntary, quickly became a death march. In the winter of 1831, the first Choctaw families were forced from their homes. Most were given no wagons, no horses, just what they could carry on their backs. They walked hundreds of miles through mud, ice, and swollen rivers. Food was scarce. Many died of pneumonia, dysentery, and exhaustion. One survivor, a young girl named Nita, later told her grandchildren,
"We buried my baby brother beside the trail. We couldn't stop long. The soldiers said we had to keep walking."
Between 1831 and 1833, over 15,000 Choctaw were removed. At least 2,500 died along the way. U.S. newspapers of the time quoted a Choctaw chief who called it a trail of tears and death. It was the first time that phrase was used, and it would not be the last. The Choctaw who survived the journey arrived in what is now Oklahoma, a harsh and unfamiliar land. They built homes from scratch, replanted their crops, re-established councils and ceremonial dances. Churches were erected, schools opened. A constitution was written in 1838, modeled after the U.S. system. Despite the trauma, they rebuilt. But not everyone left the homeland. Some Choctaw remained in Mississippi, refusing removal. They lived in secrecy or posed as freed slaves or settlers to avoid detection. These Mississippi Choctaw were forgotten by policy, but not by heritage. Today, many are recognized as the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. Generations later, the pain of removal remains embedded in Choctaw identity. Ceremonies honor the ancestors who walked the trail. Songs are sung in the old language. Elders pass down the stories to the young, like Nita's great-granddaughter, who now teaches Choctaw language classes in Durant, Oklahoma. The Choctaw are not just survivors, they are leaders. They operate their own schools, hospitals, and businesses. They donate to disaster relief efforts across the world, most notably to Ireland during the Great Famine, remembering what it felt like to be hungry and forgotten. Today, they are a sovereign nation, a people with pride, with memory, and with an unbreakable spirit. The Trail of Tears was not just a route on a map, it was a wound, carved into the soul of a nation. But from that wound came strength. The Choctaw people endured not because they were forced to, but because they chose to live, to remember, to honor. And so their story lives on, not just in textbooks, but in heartbeat and breath, in drum and song. If you believe these voices must be heard, share this video. Subscribe for more stories from the edges of forgotten history. Because memory is power. And the Choctaw remember.